What is a footprint in SEO, especially when talked about in negative terms like link building? That's where it's easily detectable or identifiable that you are doing things intentionally to manipulate search performance. And with backlinks, that's like, if you have a whole bunch of, domains that you're using for link building all hosted on the same hosting account, the same IP, then backlinks coming, then you're going to have multiple referring domains that have the same IP, right? That's an issue. Um, Interlinking between link building sites. So that creates a footprint. So that's why we're very, very careful with semantic links that when we use a link source, so a referring domain to link to any part of a local business or SEO campaign, whether that's a direct link to the money site, a link to the GBP, a link to the ID page, or any branded asset, or a link to a tier one link. So if we're building a tier two link to a tier one link, we make sure that we don't use the same referring domain that if it's already been linked to some other asset that is involved with that company. So in other words, if we're using a link source to link to anything that is related to a company, an SEO campaign for a company, then that referring domain is now off limits to be used again. What I see a lot of, improper link building still being done is when you are interlinking between that. So if you take the same referring domain source and you link to the money site, but then you also link to like a blogger blog, a branded blogger blog, or a G site or something like that, because now you've got the same source domain linking to two different assets that are part of the same company. That is a footprint. Okay. So we try to limit it to only one link per referring domain to any campaign. Okay. And in some cases, there are some cases where we've run out of inventory for a particular, and I've contacted the client and said, listen, we don't typically do this, but if you do it very sparingly, shouldn't be an issue. So here's the option. We can use the same source domain for this asset as well. But that's very rare that I will ever even offer that as an alternative, because again, that can create a footprint. If you do it, one or two here and there is okay, but if you do that consistently, it creates a footprint. Expanding your entity footprint or your brand footprint is a benefit if done correctly. That's what we were talking about earlier, so I'm not going to rehash that.